So, I guess today I'll be sort of like the disembodied Errol Morris voice here. But for people that are watching this is our Community Connectors event. It's connected to our current show, which is called Gen-erations. It's a career retrospective for our outgoing executive director, Genevieve Aichele, and we have a panel here convened to talk about Genevieve and legacy and transformation and all of that. And I thought the first thing we could do is go around the room clockwise. We'll start with Monique. And let's talk about how you first got involved in the NHTP and how you met Genevieve.
Excellent. So my name is Monique, and in 2008 probably, I sent Genevieve a cold email because I found the theater's website, and I just wrote her and said, I think what you do is amazing, and I love this idea of you making applied theater happen, and this is me. And you wrote me back, and you were like, thank you so much for reaching out. And I was like beside myself. I thought, oh my gosh, you wrote me back. And then unrelated, I came a year later, auditioned, and got into Lysistrata, and that was, I haven't left. I can't leave you now. So that's how it started for me.
Yeah, I moved on to the Seacoast in 2011, I think. And I was just looking to get involved in the theater scene, and Liz Crane put me in touch with you because she'd done Celebration and the Lizard play, Seascape, right? Yeah. And I remember I came over to just talk to you. I was so nervous too. I remember I bought a new shirt. And I printed out my resume, and I sent it to you, and I was trying to be very impressive by putting the Ed Lesac training on it, and you pointed out that I spelled it wrong. No, but we clicked and we talked about like theater ed opportunities and artist residency opportunities, and yeah, I've been here pretty consistently since 2011, I would say. Cool. Doing everything.
Literally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my quick story.
Wow. John, you're up.
My story is much more recent. Moved here to the Seacoast on December 30th of this past year, so less than 6 months ago. And my wife and I came here from LA area, hoping to explore a supportive arts community, and we were very interested in getting involved in the theaters in the area. Fortunately, we happened to be just exploring a little bit, and we drove into the parking lot because we found NHTP on a Google search. Drove into the parking lot and saw the theater, and it looked like it was closed, and I said, we'll go back, in a couple of days, we'll go back next week. And my wife, being as aggressive as she is, decided, no, I'm gonna go in and see what's going on. So I'm like, you can't go in there, it looks like it's closed. She said, well, let's see if the door's open. And so she came in, and Genevieve heard her calling from the office, and then I followed Lisa, my wife, in here, and we just started having a conversation and a tour of the theater with Genevieve, and just immediately hit it off. I can't remember the specifics of what was said, but immediately I could tell that your taste was just like that we would have similar tastes and similar feelings about goals in theater, and I just got a good vibe. It just felt right, and then we continued our conversations, became friends, and meetings and interviews, and quickly I'm doing shows in NHTP, and then and now I will be stepping in as the director of theater operations on July 1st.
Life comes at you fast.
Life comes fast. It is perhaps the most thrilling 5.5 months that I could possibly imagine, and a whole lot has happened, and I could not be happier. And keep the train going because this is great.
It's like when your mother says, "Just go give him your resume."
That is exactly it. That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. So.
You want a job?
Well, I'm Kathy, and I met Genevieve, I think it was in the 1980s, at the Palace Theater. I was doing a play, and there was a buzz in the dressing rooms. Genevieve's here tonight. Genevieve's here. And I'm just going, oh, I'm excited already. I didn't know exactly. But, and then I met you downstairs, the Palace Theater, in that hallway where all the dressing rooms are, and I popped my head out and I introduced myself and we chatted briefly. And then I think it was, 10, 15 years later, in 2001, I moved to Portsmouth, and I'm going, I will have a chance to work with Genevieve. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I was determined. And I auditioned for one play that you did at the music hall. I didn't get cast, but that did not stop me.
Oh, that was.
And I kept coming back and talking to you. And the first show I did was The Duel.
Right.
That was a play about Alexander Hamilton. Who knew? Who
knew?
It would be such a big thing. But yeah, that was the first play. I think that was maybe 2005 or 6 or something like that.
Yes.
And yeah, and I've stuck around ever since. And now I'm a company artist, and I feel pretty happy about that.
Hi, I'm Corey, and as the story goes, I was almost born at NHTP. My mom, who is actually in our audience tonight, was on the board of directors, or the board of NHTP, when I was a baby, an infant in my baby bassinet carrier, and so she used to actually bring me to board meetings in the carrier before I can even remember. So this place is kind of in my DNA. I couldn't stop it. So I went ahead and started their youth programs here. The kids theater camp was the first show I was ever in here on this stage. I was about 6 years old, and I played a monarch butterfly going to Mexico. And it's just, NHTP has been an incredibly formative part of my life, and Jen has been one of my incredible mentors that I'm just so lucky and grateful that I have had through this time to help me to kind of give me this. I think this place is bigger than a theater for me. It's like a place that was safe and welcoming, and allowed me to kind of craft my artistry even from a very young age, which I think is just an incredible thing for young people to have. So I went ahead and did the youth repertory company from middle school to high school, and then I went and studied theater education at college, surprise. And then I came back, and I'm now an executive assistant, and I'm just so happy that I've been able to, start to give back a little bit to this place that has shaped who I am as a person.
So what I'd like to hear from Genevieve now, and to kind of put ourselves in the context of where we are in this moment and this time of transformation and transition for the theater. I think we all sort of know the story of the New Hampshire Theater Project, but I know you can give us a short version of it. But what I'd like to hear about, after we hear a little bit about that, is where we are now and what's happening.
A short version. Well, luckily, since I've already done 2 interviews today, I have this down. So in the early 80s, there were a group of us performers based around Portsmouth, and we mostly toured shows into schools. And we decided that we wanted a central office or a place where we sort of collaborating our skills, and we would take turns being in the office and acting like we were a much bigger organization than we really were. And that was called Kitchen Sink Productions. And then we moved around. The first 10 or 15 years, we moved to so many different spaces. There's actually a video on the website that has all the places we were in Portsmouth, both performing, and we had a studio and office space, including a phase where we just kept moving farther and farther down Islington Street away from town. But then we decided that we wanted to be able, I told Janae this, we went to a bank and asked for a loan, a startup business loan, and they laughed at us. So we decided, well, if we want to be able to build new shows and build more audiences, we need to incorporate as a nonprofit. And so we did, and that was 1988, and that was New Hampshire Theater Project. And gradually all the other founders, though they stayed connected in different ways, just kind of moved on. And I realized that I didn't want to just be a theater company. I wanted to be what we now call an applied theater company. That term didn't even exist then. But I feel like theater, as theater artists, we have an obligation to give back to the world. And theater can be used for so many other things than just entertainment, although entertainment is wonderful. And so as we grew, the people that grew with the New Hampshire Theater Project were also dedicated to that. That when Kathy came, we were talking about this earlier today. So we realized, although we liked being a touring company, that we really needed a home space. We needed a home space in the Seacoast area. And so in 2001, we spent an entire year negotiating with the shipyard. We were going to be the resident theater company there's a 400-seat theater on the base. And we signed the lease on August 26th, and everyone joked about the war clause. And I had a very bad feeling. And 3 weeks later, 9/11 happened. And that was it, because the base was on high alert. It was essentially now wartime. And because the theater is right up next to the high security area where the nuclear subs come in, it was never going to happen again. And it was a really tough time, because I remember that one of my best friends is principal of a elementary school in New Jersey. And they saw the towers crash, and 10% of her students lost their parents that day. And I felt like, what am I going to say? I lost my theater? It was just such a tragic time. And the company, we were all so demoralized. I think you were off the board by that time, Elaine. I think Jennifer Kinsey was the president at that time. But we just decided to close. That was it. And then Marguerite Matthews called me, and Kelly Davis had called her and asked if we wanted to have a theater here in the West End, and she asked if we would go in with them. And we spent a year and a half basically building this place with our office in the cars, in the parking lot. And that's when we moved here to West. And then at that point, we had one part-time person who was like an office manager. Nobody else got paid. We had no staff. And in the over almost 20 years that we've been here, we've really grown into where we are now. And so where we are now is new. We don't know where we are. I feel very excited, especially after the meeting last night with the programming committee and where the next generation is going to take us. But I feel pretty happy about where we are. I wish I could have left you with a little bit more financial stability, but money was never been a thing for me.
I have a question, sort of related to that. So in that period in the early aughts when you were building this place up and the company was more itinerant, what did you do to make ends meet? And I mean that for like the organization, but also just you personally. There's only one part-time person.
Well, we still were touring shows at the time. I did a lot of artist in residence programs, so I taught at schools, and I was just beginning to do some of the corporate work that I do, some of the coaching. So we all were working. I don't think I ever had another job. I was always doing something with this. But that's a good question. Lived on air. But of course, we paid $200 a month in rent here in Portsmouth.
Right.
And I was looking at a fee sheet that we charged at schools in the 1980s, and it was more money than we could get today. And I'm not talking about counting for inflation. It was literally more money. We would get $750 a day to go into a school. You couldn't get that now. So it was a different time. You could live on a lot less.
Sort of
Good question.
jumping off of that question, I think I've heard the story of NHTP's inception, but I'm really curious, as someone who benefited from their education programs, how did that get started? Did it come from Artist in Residency? Was it always part of the Applied Theater mission? I'm just curious.
Wow, this is so great. Well, yes, it really did grow from the Artist in Residence programs. We did a lot all over the state. Particularly Blair and I did a majority of them. And there were other artists as well, but we did most of them. And I taught up at a summer camp up in Maine for some summers. I used to call it Theater in the Mud. And one day as I was lying in my sleeping bag on the floor of a weird tent or something, with Daddy Longlegs crawling over me, I thought, I could make more money if I did a summer camp of my own in Portsmouth. And so we had just finished a residency at Little Harbor, and we decided to try doing a summer camp there. And it was really a success. And that grew, we did that camp for years and years. That grew into it was a story theater camp. And Blair and I did it, and then we did it through, then we were at the music hall, and then eventually here for a number of years. And then those kids who were in 5th grade when we started became teenagers. And at that time, there weren't very many drama programs in the schools. I remember writing a grant, there were 6 drama teachers in the entire state. And I wanted a place, to me the theater's always been a safe place. And I wanted to offer that to young people, but I also wanted them to be able to do. Musicals have changed recently, since Hamilton really. They've changed, and they often deal with serious topics. But at that time, it was mostly fluff. And I wanted to introduce kids to really good literature. So that's when we started the Youth Repertory Company. I think the original kids that had done story theater were about 13. They were in middle school when we started Youth Rep. Our first show was Harvey in 1999, which was at the McDonough Street Theater. And then it just kept growing from there. And then a lot of the adult programs got started because the parents said, we want this for us. So then we started doing more adult training and professional development, etc. But yeah, so it did really grow out of the Artist in Residence programs.
Oh, that's cool.
And I will just say one more thing, because a couple of the folks, like people like Robin Fowler, that who's now part of the company, we would do residencies and see young people that nobody would think of as, this person is a drama person. Or they were kids often that would be struggling in regular academics. And I just knew they had a gift. And I wanted a place for them to come to. They usually weren't into sports. They didn't know what they were into, but I knew they could do something here. And many of them have gone on, even if they didn't go into theater, they've gone on to be very successful in lots of other ways.
So this show that's up right now, Gen-erations, is kind of a career retrospective with a smattering of greatest hits. First of all, Genevieve, I was wondering if, getting the show on its feet brought back any particular memories. I think we all have, when we look back on careers and things, we have like the obvious ones. But I'm curious about if there was something you hadn't thought about in a while that came about as a result of this, and for everybody else after, same question.
Well, I think the hardest thing for me was going through all the photographs, and luckily I had CJ to cull them for me, because I would have had hundreds of them. And one of the hardest parts of that was to see the people who left us. There were a number of actors and people that were involved with NHTP that have died through the years, particularly Lisa, who was in The Duel with You. Very tragic. She died when she was 29 of a brain tumor. She basically died here. Blair and I took her to the hospital. And So that was hard, I think, bringing back those memories. But then it was also reliving things, like looking at the first 12th night I did with Youth Rep Company. Those kids are now in their like 35 or so. And then we did 12th night, how many years ago was that, the one that you guys were in?
12?
Something like that, yeah, we did it again. And that was the one we toured. So looking at those, and then thinking about doing scenes from those shows for this production, which I didn't direct. Monique directed one scene and Todd directed the other one. And it was just kind of cool to see that growth. It was fun to go back and visit the songs for Lysistrata, because I always felt that they were never fully appreciated, because the play itself was so comic, and we wrote some of these serious songs that didn't quite jive with the production, but they were important. So that was good. And The Girl Who Found Fear, doing that piece, which started out in the early 80s as a clown show, and then eventually morphed into a solo storytelling thing. And then I wrote it as a script for my nieces. Their mother's from Turkey, and so they were in a story theater camp, and I rewrote it for them and created that script. So lots of stuff. Yeah. And then doing The Odd Couple with Kathy again.
We had so much fun the first time around. It's been great to kind of dip back into that a bit.
Yeah. And Monique, you were in that as well.
I was, and being able to direct that, the two of you, again, in The Odd Couple for this piece, reminded me just how hard and wonderful comedy is. It's hard to do, right? But it looks, you're so great, it looks so easy, and to hear the audiences laughing and thinking about, it's hard to get there. So that was neat for me to see the other side of that.
CJ, anything about this striking you?
About the Generations?
Yeah.
Well, my involvement was pretty peripheral, but it was mostly with helping with the scenic elements, and it was a trip going back to look at those photos. I deliberately looked at them, Jen. I don't know if I told you this, but I deliberately looked at them in reverse chronological order.
Oh, okay.
Just to sort of like work backwards. It's crazy to think that it was, at least my involvement has been 12 years now.
You were so young looking at the first
Yeah.
couple shows that you did. I was like,
Right.
wow, CJ was just a kid.
Yeah, but there was so much, I think what struck me too was like there's a lot there, but there's also a lot not there.
Right.
And I think about like all the camps I've done with Corey when she was a
I know.
preteen,
Isn't that it's
Back in
wild?
the day, I remember writing Brave Margaret for you when you barely say your name in front of a group.
I know.
But just all of that, and residency programs, and workshops and camps and classes, and even just Monday when we were working on this conference workshop together. It was nice. We were talking about it too. It was nice, you can just sort of go in and trust that the other person knows what's going on, and there was some really seamless baton passing.
Yes.
That I think we've established over the years, and an elephant in the room, and all that's grown into, and touring productions, and it's been a lot. It's been very, very full and rich.
It's interesting to think about what's documented and what's not, because it's a lot like memory, Some of it you have, some of it you don't. And you can't necessarily even explain where the gaps are. Some of them you're pretty sure. But that is definitely something that I would imagine most incoming leaders of a nonprofit don't get to have. So, Sean, I'm curious what this has been like for you to be involved, in this kind of time warp you were never really a part of.
That's exactly it. Because as being a part of the show itself, and having a substantial amount to do in the show has been just a rewarding theatrical experience for me as an actor, and just on its own, it's been incredible to work with such talented people, work on such amazing pieces. But it's also had this real importance attached to it, to me, respect or reverence, because I am the new person, the new element that's in this. I'm working with talent that have known each other for so long, and many who have been a part of the productions that we are doing scenelets from, who have been part of those previous productions, and who share a history with this organization. Looking at the photos and seeing this the wealth of experience and history and so many great things, beautiful images that I can feel it. Having had a lifetime worth of theatrical experience myself, I look and I see the moments shared and the beautiful things that have been created on stage, and I can imagine everything that was a part of that. And knowing now some of the people who have been involved, it's very moving, very emotional to me, but also significant, and makes me realize how important this company is and how important the position that I'm stepping into is. I have a tremendous respect for the history of the organization. I say that in the curtain speech each night, but the fact that I repeat it to different audiences does not make it any less true or sincere. I have an enormous honor to celebrate the history of the organization and to get to be a part of its future. I am so grateful, incredibly grateful.
It was a trip watching you and Matt do Finding the Prince,
Yeah.
which we wrote in 2014, and I don't think I've thought about it since the last performance 10 years ago. And then to see like two people who had no connection to this area, let alone that play and the theater, like doing it, I was like, whoa! It just it sort of like illustrated like the power of like doesn't necessarily just belong to any one
Right.
person. It's sort of bigger than that.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. and
That was
powerful.
such a great scene. We
Yeah.
talked about how well written it is. You get to know these two
I know I wanted
characters.
to like share thoughts, but I was like, no, it's not mine anymore.
Yeah.
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 So it was really cool. Yeah.
It's powerful to have a piece of performance that sort of, I think every cast member in some way has a piece of their past written into this show. And certainly for me, it's such an incredible thing to see. Like, I see the photos of me and when I was a student, and I have these memories of Jen and CJ both as my teachers, and then I also have these newer memories of I directed The Girl Who Found Fear with Megan in 2019 in an artist in residency program in Nashua. So the journey from student to teacher, while still holding on to the mentorships that have really kind of shaped the trajectory of everything is. I think it's wonderful that that's in the show as like an undercurrent, and I think that at least for those of us who know the history, we're thinking about all the ways that these pieces relate and are connected to kind of the broad scope of NHTP's impact in the world, and that's a big impact. So it's cool.
So, Genevieve, we know you're not like really going anywhere. Don't want this to be like too funereal or anything.
Right.
But I do think, I know I kind of put it out to each of you to just think about what you'd want to ask Genevieve. And so before I direct anything else, I would like to know, ask her anything, basically. What would you like to know? Fire away.
I asked Genevieve something this morning, and I loved your answer. It was about the production at the Palace Theater of Diary of Anne Frank, and I think that's such a telling story, and I think you should tell that one again.
Oh, yes, it was a production of Anne Frank, and were you in that?
Yes, Mrs.
Kathy
Van
was
Dam.
in it, Blair had directed it, and afterwards there was a panel with a Holocaust survivor, an elderly man, and I remember that someone asked him the question, what will happen when your generation is all gone? when there's no one alive who actually experienced the Holocaust. And he said, it will be up to the artists to remember history. And that moment changed my life. I've kept that in mind. I remember when we were doing I Am My Own Wife. And I remember that one time there's a scene where he's coming out and the Allies have taken over Berlin. And you asked me, what am I seeing, as the director? And I did all this research and found out, it was the Russian armies and the British armies and the American armies all coming in. And systematically, sorry Claire, but raping almost every woman in the city. And we never hear about that. So to learn about that, when we did Elephant Man, there's this little ditty that the pinheads sing about King Leopold of the Congo, and everybody always, it's very funny, ha ha ha. But I did some research and found out that it's about Leopold, who was the 5th highest mass murderer in the history of the world in the Congo. He pretty much slaughtered the entire, I didn't know this. And so that's one of the things that I think, whether we're doing a fictional play or a play based purely on history, that's part of our obligation is to remember those things. When we did Mother Courage and Her Children, we brought in some people who taught about art and theater as literally social justice in fearing for your life in doing it. And anyway, so that has permeated a lot of what I do, and I really credit it to that gentleman's words and giving us a responsibility.
How have you seen, this is unrelated, but I'm curious about how you've seen the landscape of just the arts and community, whatever that can mean, change in this area over the last 40 years. And obviously we know there's been drastic changes since 2020, but even in that, what's sort of been the shift in tastes or vibe, or the way that arts work, the way that arts work as a business, and where do you see that trajectory going, do you think?
Wow, that's a big question. Well, it's interesting because, when I first moved here, it was 1978. And as I said, rent was $200 a month, and there were still topless bars downtown. And but it was an exciting time to be living in this city because there were a lot of artists moving in here. The city was not the bright spot that it is now. And it was exciting. It was like what I imagined it must have been like to live in the village back in those days, whatever. It was our mini little village. And of course, then it grew, and then we went through a recession where things were tough. And then one of the things that I think really changed the city and the landscape of the arts in the city was the Shipyard Project, which was in the late 90s. And that was the Liz Lerman Dance Company was brought in by the music hall. And they did a big project with the Shipyard. And suddenly there was this realization by a lot of members of the community that the arts were not only very valuable, but that Portsmouth had something pretty special, because for a tiny little town, we had this enormous arts culture. And that was when the mayor's cultural art, the first plan was created. In fact, we're doing a new one now, it was 20 years later, but the first cultural arts plan. And I'll never forget this, because we had a, God love her, the mayor then, she used to say, oh, those artists, they're always complaining about something. But then she went from that to actually inviting the artists and the community to include a cultural plan as part of the city's strategic plan. And so that was an exciting time as well. There was a period where a lot of the artists that ran organizations never spoke to each other, never collaborated with each other. Everyone was sort of, this is my territory and my turf. I was never that kind of person, which is, I think, why Marguerite invited me to collaborate with them here. But that has changed tremendously. The people who are now running organizations in this town are really working together and supportive of each other and collaborate in all kinds of ways. And COVID only improved that, but that trend was already starting. I think, one big issue is the housing for artists. I mean, nobody can afford to live in Portsmouth, and most artists can't. I mean, I'm just there because I have amazing landlords who basically offer me affordable housing. But that's a problem. But on the other hand, there's a lot of new people coming in here from New York, from Boston, and they're happy to donate to theater. They want to look for good theater. They want interesting theater. So that, everything comes with a price and a balance. I think there's a trend right now to want to really improve the quality of the arts as opposed to the quantity. For a long time, it was just, there's lots of people, there's so much art here, but now it's like, well, if we collaborate, we can make better art. And I think that's also a positive trend.
I'll also open it up to questions from the audience too. This is a great time if anybody has any questions you'd like to ask.
Sure.
So what you got?
What are some funny moments that have happened in the theater, like backstage or anything? Really?
Oh, I like this.
This question.
Well, let's see, last Sunday. I do this piece about St. Philomena, and the pink light stayed on. And it was on during your piece, during Finding the Prince. And then I came out and I made a joke that Philomena didn't want to leave. And then all of the lights started flashing like crazy.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. It was like strobe lights. And
Wow.
Corey and I were in the middle of our song. We were trying to finish the song, and we're going, and finally we had to just shut all the lights off and finish the act with the work lights on. And then Brennan and CJ, and that was of course the one we were videotaping too. So they did some troubleshooting and hooked up the old lighting board. And Q came in today to see what was wrong, and it turned out it was not Philomena. He said. It was a dimmer that was screwy. But that was pretty funny. We were all, kind of shaken up. But that's the ones you never forget.
Yeah.
I always remember that one show. Was it As You Like? What was it? No, Two Gentlemen of Verona.
Oh.
Where Josh had that costume on. Every time he walked down stage, his pants would fall down.
And he wasn't the only one. Those pants are cursed. It's happened to 3 of us now. It happened to Van, and it happened to me during a rehearsal.
Well, didn't you have a pair of pants that was
I
falling
would say
down
absolutely.
in rehearsal?
I was almost down to my ankles during 12th night. Yeah.
You probably have the one pair of pants that fall down, no matter who's wearing them.
When we were doing Amadeus, this is the funny, whenever I think of this space, I think of this story. It was like the pivotal final scene, and somebody's phone goes off right in the front row.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes off again and again. And then this person takes it, goes into the lobby. If you're watching this at home, you might not be able to see that there's just a curtain between here and the lobby. And this person, just full voice, goes, "I'm at a play." "Yeah, I think it's almost over." And then they just walked right back in
finale.
and sat down.
Oh my gosh.
Really long.
She was actually a board member at the time, too. Well, that was funny. Another funny one I remember was we were doing Blythe's Spirit, and there's a seance, and everything's supposed to be pitch black. And I was Madame Arcady, the medium that's running the thing. And we went to pitch black, and somebody had their cell phone on in the audience. And I stayed in character, but I just said, "We will not be able to begin the seance until that light is off." And they didn't realize what it was. And there was just, we sat there in silence till finally someone said, "It's huge." And they finally turned it off. So, but somebody said to me afterwards, only the artistic director could get away with that. But I was like, no, you should not have your cell phone on. And it felt really good to call them on it.
Mine isn't so much funny as it is sort of a sacred thing. I had in the play Men on Boats, I had a moment where I came in at the end as a different fella with a top hat, and Jen gave me this top hat, and I was a character who I left for some period of the last act, And I was sitting out back with this top hat, and it just felt bigger than me. There was something about this piece, and you know, you have millions of props and things that you use in your lifetime as an actor, but this was something. What did I say to you? I kind of came to you, I was like, Jen, what's the deal with the top hat? And you said...
So, the top hat belonged to my Uncle Jimmy, who was in a community theater when I was little, and I went to see my first play. I was probably 5 or 6. It was Iolanthe, the Gilbert and Sullivan, and he died of a brain tumor, ironically the same thing as Lisa did, and when his wife, my aunt, was cleaning out closets, she found the top hat. It's a real beaver top hat, and it was his. And I always treasured it because it was really what got started. We started in theater, but then you had a connection to it as well.
And I kept reading the Moss Hart. Again, there's a huge library back there that Corey has so beautifully put together. I could read any play sitting back there. I had 20 minutes, and this Moss Hart book was there, and somehow that was also connected to your uncle.
Yeah.
So there's that. It was just kind of wild.
Yeah.
Really wild.
I always think he's looking over.
I think so. I think so.
Do you have any, do you have maybe it hasn't happened yet, but do you have a most precious memory when you think about an HTP over the last 35, 40 years?
You asked me that question this morning, and Janae asked me that question this afternoon. There are so many. There are so many. But I think if I could sum it up, to me someone asked me, there's a theme to all of your plays, and I can't figure out what that is. And I said, I know what it is. It's nobility. To me, when you see an actor portraying this character that has risen or sunk, but they are larger than life. They're tapping into something that is so noble and good and true about the human race. So when I think of some of the youth reppers doing these pieces, Dan doing Hamlet, 3 hours, we didn't cut a word, and people just completely spellbound. When I think of you and Amadeus and I Am My Own Wife, or Blair when he played the wounded captain in the Finding My Own Prince, just so many different memories of that, of every actor that's been on this stage and every young person, and even the tiniest one. That's why I love those pictures of the youth reppers. It was like, there's nobody going like, hi, happy entertainment. There are these photographs of people playing amazing characters, and so I think that is the most precious thing to me. And I wouldn't say there's any one, because every single person who's been on the stage has had, including myself, has had those moments. And I think too, my solo show Resurrection, not because of me, but because Peter Motzon produced that play. And he is the only person who completely produced a show for me and took over all the admin piece so that I could be nothing but an actor. And even though a lot of people pitched in to do a lot of things, he's the only person who ever did that for me. Mm-hmm. And that meant a lot, because I could not have done that show and also been the producer.
So Jen, you've got this, I can't shake the thing you're saying. You're saying I'm not retiring, right?
How do you retire if you're an artist?
Right.
Number one, you can't afford to.
Right.
No.
But you're rewiring.
Yeah.
So do you think that for you, after you have a little respite, a little break, what is it you want to do? Is it acting? Is it writing? What's that pull for you?
Probably all of the above.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah. I think the biggest thing is that I always carry so many burdens personally, and I need to let go of some of the the burdens. I'm happy to shift them to all of you. And I definitely, I found that I like raising money for New Hampshire Theater Project because I love what this is. And so I'm looking forward to doing that. I don't plan to do that long term until we can get enough together to hire a development director.
Mm-hmm.
And the Elephant in the Room program, I want to keep working on that, mostly from an artistic point of view, and working with that. I do want to do some writing. I mean, I have the publisher that handles my youth scripts has been begging me to write a book for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to, I hope I'll still do some acting. I've got to actually have a film audition on Tuesday. These weird things keep coming out of the blue. And I love my coaching and the corporate work, like the workshop we did Monday. I was like, wow, how can a person get paid and have so much fun? So I hope I'll keep doing all of those things. And I want to, still be involved here, but I just don't want to have to be here every single day.
Mm.
So, but who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I do love the coaching work that I do, particularly because I work with people from all over the world. And a while ago, I was, praying, I wish I could do something to help with climate change. Do another play about climate change. I mean, what is that going to do?
Mm.
And then sort of fell in my lap that I do coaching work for the Environmental Defense Fund. So I'm working with people all over the world who are actually doing the work of helping with climate change. And so that feels very powerful to me.
I have a question for everybody else. When you think about the future of the New Hampshire Theater Project, what are you looking forward to? Start with you, Carol. We'll counterclockwise this time.
Yes. I just had a bunch of thoughts pop into my head. So I'm looking forward to all of it. I mean, I think that this is, at the beginning of this year, Jen asked me to try to design a little logo for our season theme, Transformation and Legacy, or Legacy and Transformation. And Ben Bagley reworked it a little bit, but it's a butterfly kind of coming out of the chrysalis, which is particularly meaningful to me because that was my first show here, was a butterfly. And I think that it's hard to know what, the next 5-10 years will look like here, but I know it's going to be incredible, whatever it is, because I just deeply trust and respect all of my fellow artists and Jen, who is still going to be here helping and providing all of her wisdom. And, we've been talking about so many things. I am excited about maybe the education program going back to what it was before COVID or to something new. And I'm excited about more people directing and about sort of devised work and bringing new playwrights like Lisa and Sean to this stage and bringing more diverse voices, having a real reinvigoration of like our anti-racist and LGBTQ themes that are so pressing and necessary to discuss in theater right now. Using technology to maybe connect people around the world to our theater, because we can do that now. So all of it. I mean, I don't think I'd say there's one thing in particular that I'm excited for, but the more we talk about it, the more I just get, ready to say, okay, whatever it is, Monique says, I'm going to do a play and this is what it is. Yes, like sign me up to help with budgeting or ticketing or acting or whatever it is, because I think it's going to be awesome. So, yeah, all of it.
Kathy?
I believe on July 1st, the new season will be announced.
Yes.
And I'm very excited about that. I can't wait. I tried to get a little bit of information out of Jen this morning and I didn't get anywhere.
Kept
So
your secrets.
I'm really excited about the new season. I know that it will continue to keep up the high quality that the New Hampshire Theater Project is known for. The fact that we challenge our audiences, we challenge our artists, and we look forward, and it's I think that, I know that that will be continued, and I look forward to that. And also, I think it's exciting that there are younger people coming in and to get a new perspective, a kind of a fresh perspective on what we do and how we do it.
So much I could say, but quality theater. You just spoke about maintaining the legacy of quality that New Hampshire Theater Project has been known for, and that I want to see quality theater here. I want to see important messages delivered. I want to see outreach in the community to bring people who have never been to an NHTP show to here to watch great art being made and to watch important topics being discussed. Theater that makes the audience feel, theater that makes the audience think, and a home for artists to do good work. I want this as an organization to continue many years into the future, and so I want it to be a successful transition. We have a team that is passionate, ambitious, excited, and we're gonna take some big swings, but with the thought of keeping everything that is true and pure about NHTP, keeping it alive and well, and then I'm just, for a personal selfish note, since I'm gonna, I'm putting my heart into making the theater great and into working with everyone, but on a personal selfish note, I'm looking forward to getting to do something with you, with you, Jen. And I hope to, we're in the same production now, but I hope to get to, whether in a director, actor, writer, co-cast member, in some relationship like that, to get to further bond with you as an artist as things go forward, especially some of the pressures of running the organization will be off of you, and so just to get to then work with you in that capacity as well.
Well, I'm looking forward to that too, so.
Yeah.
I don't know, I find myself feeling very wistful thinking about that question. I think anytime there's like a transition, you can kind of plan for things or strategize about how to move forward, but there's always like variables you haven't considered and like blind spots, right, that you're not aware of. So I think I'm interested in kind of learning what those blind spots are, and like who those people might be that are just not on anyone's radar yet. What those opportunities might be that nobody's considered yet, and just seeing, like, learning what the unknowns are. That kind of comes with transition. I'm feeling some of those unknowns, I think like at the end of June, like it's a very sort of like definitive like chapter of my experience with NHTP is coming to a close, just as far as my like job relationship. So so there's a lot of unknowns for me on the other side of that, but yeah, I'm curious I'm looking forward to seeing what those might be.
I agree. That's one of the fun things is what's going to happen. Maybe everything will fall apart, but as the Girl Who Found Fear says, that'll be exciting.
CJ, you said a word that that echoed Jen saying it, and that's opportunity. And I think one thing that you do, Jen, that feels pretty magical, though I don't know if it is you've created opportunity for so many people, and for so many things. And most importantly, perhaps, you know, the opportunity for the community to come together, to have these huge discussions, to feel, to think, to exist, to acknowledge who they are. So I'm like beyond excited to continue to create opportunity. And Sean, when you said quality, you know, we gathered the artists, the company artists, the New Hampshire Theater Project company artists, and we said, what makes NHTP different? What's the big deal? And that was the word quality that kept echoing, and meaning, to do pieces that have meaning. So that's what I just know the future is going to hold that.
Well, that's our time. And, you know, we talked about the future, and I think that's kind of a lovely way to end. But, yeah, I mean, thank everybody for talking tonight. This was really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
There we go.